Hello everyone! It's finally time to check the successor to the Gulikit KK3 Pro. Let's see what new features it brings to the table and if it's worth picking it up. There's already a few improvements on the carrying case. You can see the button combinations for some of the functions of this controller, and there is a hole to charge the controller inside the case as well. In the carrying case, you also have the dongle and a button remover. Here's my KK3 Pro after all this time. On the top, the paint on the triggers and shutter buttons is wearing off, and I barely use it. And this won't be a problem with the KK3 Max. Visually, the KK3 Max is identical to the previous model, with only a few differences on the triggers, buttons, and Dpad. The analog stick is still removable, and the Dpad, face buttons, and menu buttons feels like rubber membranes. The controller will turn on if you push any of the face buttons. The buttons have a good distance from the shell and won't sink completely flat. And this time you have dual triggers. These are Hall effect triggers, but you can move the switch in the back and modify it into digital triggers with a clicky micro switch feedback. It is different from a controller like the Vader 3 Pro. It has a small travel distance before hitting the switch. This time we have 4 back buttons with slots to put in the paddles. In this box you have 6 paddles with different sizes and shapes. And they're all made of metal. They're very easy to press and has a good resistance. But I found that using 2 paddles at the same time is not very comfortable. Your fingers won't have any place to rest, and you must be careful to not press them by accident at all times. It's much better if you use only one, and you can position it higher or lower depending on your preferences. I prefer to use them higher because if you put them too low, you will feel them with your middle finger. And there's also these pedals similar to the DualSense Edge. These are much nicer. They're rounded and out of the way. To activate them, you must push them downwards. After using them for a while, I noticed a small strip of plastic. Later on the teardown, we'll check the durability of these slots. You can also put the paddles on the other way around, but in the end, I think that the best way to use these buttons is without the paddles at all. The buttons are still clickable, and they're completely out of the way. And if you have the paddles installed, you won't be able to put the controller on the carrying case. You also get a set of buttons with the Xbox layout. I tested with the buttons of the King Kong 2 Pro, and those fit here as well. Pay a lot of attention to not mix the buttons together because they have different shapes and sizes. And if you mix them incorrectly, you'll have a weird button layout. And even worse, if you put the wrong button in the wrong place, it can get permanently stuck. During this review, I got the B button stuck and I had no way of removing it. I have to make the entire review with this stuck button. This is a terrible design flaw. On my PC, I tested the polling rate, and even though it's saying it's 150 Hz, this is probably a bug because there is one outlier reading with a lot of ping. If you check the other readings, you will see that it's on par with other 1000 Hz controllers. Just like the King Kong 2 Pro, the sticks on this controller are amazing. Perfect circularity test with no dead zones at all. The D-pad is also very good, and the diagonals are very easy to hit. Pressing on the center won't activate all directions. And here we'll have a quick look at all of the special functions of this controller. The macro in the Gulikit controllers are the best macros ever. It can record up to 10 minutes of gameplay. And you can double tap the macro button to keep repeating the macro over and over again. When the macro is running, you can still use the analog sticks, but if you press any button, the macro will be cancelled. The repeating macro is perfect for automation of tasks in games. In this example from the King Kong 2 Pro review, I recorded a macro to make an item, then put it on repeat, and left the controller doing the job for me. Another detail is that the macro will capture all of the subtle movements of your analog sticks. Currently, no other controller can do this. Here is how macros are captured on the Big One Rainbow 2 Pro. The back pedals are also very easy to remap. The controller is compatible with multiple platforms, and you can easily switch between them without having to repair every time. It has a wake up function. It's compatible with gyro controls. And it can also read Amiibos. Speaking of the rumble, the motors on this controller is of a different kind. Here on the mechanic, the rumble moves in all directions. You can easily see by the movement of the controller. But on the King Kong 3 Max, it moves more like an up and down fashion. If I had to describe the rumble in this controller, I'd say it feels like those aquarium air pumps. The sound it makes is different too. Another interesting thing is that regular rumble motors create an interference with my microphone. But the Gulikit motor doesn't. So it's definitely a different technology. Here's a comparison with the Switch HD rumble in Super Mario Wonder. Moving to the teardown, you just have to remove the covers to access the 4 screws on the back. Here we can see the mechanism for the triggers. And the pedals are held in place by a metal piece inside. So I think this mechanism is pretty durable. Here's a look at the Maglev motors. And for the sticks, this controller uses Gulikit's proprietary analog stick modules. The battery has 950 mAh, and we can finally fix the stuck button now. And speaking of the buttons, these are Gulikit's 2nd generation mechanical buttons. On the King Kong 2 Pro, these buttons have a plastic mechanism inside with a metal spring to guarantee a long durability. This mechanism wasn't perfect though, the buttons could occasionally get stuck. But this is the 2nd generation of those mechanical buttons, and it should be much more reliable now. So I can't wait to open these buttons and see how it looks inside. And this is what's inside their second generation mechanical buttons. And this is one of the main reasons I run this channel, everyone. This here is a straight lie. There's nothing mechanical in this button compared to the previous model. Mechanical buttons are mechanical because they lack the rubber membrane that's susceptible to tearing, leaving the button useless. So in the end, these buttons have the same durability of any other membrane button out there. This is just fake advertising and it's not cool. Continuing with the review, we have membranes for the D-pad and menu buttons. And on the shutter buttons, we have a metal pivot, which is very good. But on the triggers, the pivot is made of plastic, which could break in the long run. For my final thoughts, the King Kong 3 Max is a good controller. It offers a lot of great things, with a few design flaws here and there. The fake advertising about the mechanical buttons though is not cool. We have many Hall effect sticks now because Gulikit was the first one to step in and bring this technology back. If you buy this controller, you won't be buying a bad product. But the King Kong 3 Max is definitely not as polished as other controllers like the Vader 3 Pro. And advertising fake information is not doing justice to the brand's reputation. I don't want to lose my partnership with Gulikit, but my commitment with this channel is with showing the truth. And that's it for this review. If you have the King Kong 3 Max, leave your opinions in the comments and let Gulikit know what you think about it. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.